Welcome to Personal Finance Lab's Spring 2025 update webinar. Talking about our new calculators, our new lessons, and all the new stuff that we added over the holiday break. So my name is Kevin Smith, I'm Director of Product Development, and I will be the one taking you through this tour. So here's what we're going to cover. First, I'm going to talk about some updates we made to the budget game, the way the game flows for a student. And we use that to move into talking about the comparison shopping minigame we released as part of the budget game and the Wealth Whiz quiz minigame that we also released. And I'm going to talk about some of the new lessons, calculators, and content, starting with the new calculators that we added, the new financial math lessons that we've added, our new debt snowball lesson, and some of the new videos we released. So let's get right into it. First, the change to the budget game. So in the budgeting game, if you've played it before, the student rolls a die to move forward through time. What we did over the winter break, it was a change in, so the game is not entirely based on rolling the die. Starting the month, taking each weekend, and ending the month are now separate events, so you can't roll through those. We made this change for two reasons. One of them is that the rolling the die and having too many events happening in one die roll was confusing for students, and it was introducing bugs. A lot of teachers have seen the case where a student plays through a month they shouldn't have been able to get to because the game didn't count how many months they had finished properly. So both of these are going to be addressed with this change. So just so you know what that looks like, let me pull up my screen here. Here I am at the start of January 1st, and you see instead of a die to start the month, I have a button to start month. So I'm going to click the button, which invites me to see where I'm going to live, as it has in the past. Okay, take the middle option, and then I need to start my budget building for the month. And then I need to establish what my savings goal is going to be. So after I set my savings goal, what happens is that first, we no longer have the bills issued one day at a time. All of the students' bills are issued at the first day of the month, and so they can pay them in whatever order they want. We do still have them due scattered throughout the later in the month. They can see the indicators here of when each bill is going to be due. So I have the TV bill first, the rent bill, etc. Your credit card bill is still going to be issued on the 9th of the month, depending on how much transactions you've had since the last credit card bill was issued. So and then if I roll forward, it's getting to the end of the week here. And I'm going to buy some pictures. And then I get my paycheck on the Friday, deposit that, and then on Saturday, the die roll will stop. You see, when I was on Friday, the maximum roll it would give me was a 2, so it will always end on the Saturday. And that is so there's a separate event to handle the weekend events. And I don't know if you could hear, but there's also sound effects that we added as part of the game in the fall. Whether or not you were in our last webinar, you may or may not have been aware of those. So next, I'm going to talk about the weekend as part of the next update. The next update is our comparison shopping minigame. So this is an event that happens as part of the budget game when a user chooses to take care of their household chores on the weekend. So we are releasing mini games for each of our weekend events. Our original mini game, it launches when the user chooses to work extra hours. It gives them a little puzzle game and they can earn money in their next paycheck depending on how well they perform. This next one is our comparison shopping mini game. This launches when they choose to do household chores. And the way it works is that they're going to the grocery store to buy 3 items that they forgot on their last grocery trip. Each item, they'll have 3 different alternatives. So for example, in this screenshot here, I needed to buy some lunch meat. And I have 3 options. I could get turkey that was sliced at the deli, I could get turkey that was just kind of in the deli section, which is a little bit cheaper, or I could buy some deli sliced roast beef. Each of these items have a quality score, depending on which is basically how good do I think this is. It has a quantity of how much is in each package that I'm buying, and it has a price, which may or may not be on sale. So you can see 2 of these items are on sale, one of them is just the regular list price. And so the student's challenge is to figure out which of these is giving me the best bang for my buck. So let me pull up the budget game here. I'm going to start the weekend and go right into the household chores so you can see it. So I have my smart shopper. Students playing for the first time can check the how to play, which walks through those things I just mentioned, the quality, quantity, the prices. And then I am taken to my first department. So the first thing, I need some fresh baked bread. I've got 3 loaves here. different prices. You can see this one is actually a pretty easy comparison. I got one loaf at, they're both a quality score of 8. This one's cheaper, so it's a better deal. This one is a little bit cheaper, but I also value it a little bit less. So I think the Italian loaf is going to be the best deal, and I'll buy that. Next up, I need to get something from the dairy section. Looks like butter or margarine. So in this case, this one is a better value than this, but it's also half the price, or half the quantity, and 4 times the price. So probably not the best deal. Now, as a store brand butter, I'm going to take a gamble. I think this is best because of the sale price. And if students want to do the calculations, there is, of course, a calculator built into the budget game. This one is something I need to look into myself later. And I have some pork, some ham, and some tenderloin. The spiral cut ham is quite expensive, but it's giving me a lot of meat. Let's go with the tenderloin. And then I check out and I see how well I did. So it looks like the Italian loaf was not the best deal. One of the other ones was, because the one, if you get the best deal, you'll get a bonus points, a Smart Shopper bonus of 50 points. So at the end of this game, what I'm going to get is quality of life points, which is based on the quantity and quality of what I bought. So whatever I choose, I'll get some quality of life points for that. And the Smart Shopper bonus is bonus points if I was able to determine which was the best deal of the 3 options. So after that, I will continue the game. And then again, at the end of each weekend event, you will still get a card talking about what happened for your weekend. It looks like in this case, my next grocery bill is actually going to be deducted by 15 points because I got a great deal on some stuff. All right, next up is the quiz mini game. So another mini game. This one we actually launched in the middle of the fall, but we didn't have a webinar since then to talk about it. So I'm going to play through the Wealth Whiz quiz. Is a rapid fire quiz mini game where students are going to get 10 questions on personal finance topics, and they will get bonus points based on how many questions they got right. So I will move through the next week. Complete my lesson on debit and credit cards, which I happen to already know the answer. Get my paycheck. And this weekend I will study, so I get that quiz mini game. So here it is, the Wealth Whiz quiz. I have 60 seconds to answer up to 10 questions. All of these are on personal finance and investing topics, which students may or may not know the answer, but they have 1 minute to find out. So, next. And you see the character here gives me different reactions between how many questions I'm getting right and wrong. Okay, I finished it, and you can see here I have 9 out of 10 questions right. I earned 175 bonus points, and that gets applied directly to my game score. So for each of the mini games we have, the students generally have the ability to earn up to around 200 total points, whether that's cash that they're going to get from the mini game for the working extra hours, or bonus points, or quality of life points, or a combination thereof. So no matter what they choose, it doesn't give them a significant advantage in the total game, so long as they do something. Alright, so next up is the new features, is our new calculators. And so we spent a lot of time over the winter break building out our calculator library. If you've been using Personal Finance Lab for a long time, you've known we've had a few calculators as built into our platform for quite a while, the most popular of which is the Saving to Be a Millionaire calculator, but we also have compound interest, rent versus buy, and a few others. So we updated 3 of our calculators: the compound interest, Saving to Be a Millionaire, and rent versus buy. So let me pull those up so I can show you what they look like. The compound interest calculator, this is not the right, unless I need to go to the calculator itself. This one, what it does is it's a very simple calculator showing how much a student is investing to start with, what interest rate, how long, there's sliders to help them edit that, and then it shows them what the growth is over the time period they specified with different types of compounding. So they can see what the impact is of a daily versus a annual compounding. It's not big, but it is not nothing either. The next new one is the Saving to Be a Millionaire. Oh, I already had it open apparently. So the Saving to Be a Millionaire calculator has always been one of our most popular ones. It helps students visualize how much they need to save every month to save up $1 million before they retire. So what's your age, when you want to be a millionaire at, how much you currently have invested, how much can you save per month, what kind of rate of return, and what an inflation rate. And then they see the calculation down here showing, oh, they have, based on what they're trying to do, this is the raw amount they're going to get, and then after inflation it also shows how much that's going to be worth in real purchasing power. Now let's say the student has very little to invest now, and they have very little they can save each month. They're not going to make a millionaire by their target age. What the new version of the calculator does is it actually gives them some recommendations of what they can do to reach $1 million by their target age. So they can increase their monthly savings, or they can try to achieve a higher rate of return. They're being too conservative with the portfolio they're building. So they can play around some of these settings, and we have a quiz afterwards that introduces them to play around with these settings a bit more to see what the impact of savings and rates of return have over time. The last calculator we updated is our rent versus buy calculator. So the rent versus buy calculator basically is a way for students to visualize, are they going to, depending on what they're looking at, with 2 alternatives, a home they'd be interested in renting versus a home they'd be interested in purchasing, and how long until their next move, it'll tell them what is going to be the best option. So the upgrade of this compared to our old one is we simplified how much the students have to enter. They're not going to guess what the home sale price is going to be later. We just have a expected property growth rate, so they can just kind of choose a number and play around with this to see what the property growth rate would have on the impact of their decision. We also have the assumption that anything the student has as a down payment today, they're going to be investing that the entire time until they sell the home or until they move. And we built in calculations like, oh, depending on how much money you have now when you're buying, are you going to be paying PMI? We have property tax included in this. We have homeowners insurance included in the back end of this. The old calculator was making students enter all that information, which most students just don't know off the top of their head. We really simplified it for them. And then what we do is that the calculator will give them a graph showing, here's what your net worth would be if you're just investing that down payment and then you're paying the extra rent every year. And here's what your net worth will be if you are buying a home. And when you buy a home, you're going to be paying a lower mortgage rate than you would be renting the same place. And so here's how long it's going to take before that rent versus buy to trade off. With what the settings I had here, it's going to take 17 years, so it's not a great deal. I can change the mortgage amount here. I can make the rent more expensive. Let's say it's going to cost me $1,800 for the same place, and now it's become cheaper a lot faster, just paying a little bit more rent every month. So by playing around with these curves, it helps students see how all these numbers are coming together. By, if I change this number here a little bit, it's going to change that curve, and it's going to change where they intersect. And then we have quizzes built into this that walk them through using these calculators to understand what the different impacts of each decision is going to have on each other. So those are the new calculators. Those are the old calculators we updated. We also have some new calculators. The new calculators are built into the new financial math lessons that we've written. So I'll talk about those in detail, but the first one is part of our future value lesson. And we have a future value calculator. This one is actually very straightforward, and it shows students with what exactly they entered, where all the variables go in for the calculation, and then it gives them the output. The next one is our mortgage payment calculator. This is part of our mortgages lesson. Actually, this is a different. It's actually part of our rent versus buy calculator. Before they get to the rent versus buy calculator, they have two more they can work through first. First is their home payment. With the home payment calculator, what this does is all that stuff I was talking about earlier. They're going to put a home price, they're going to put a down payment, they're going to put an interest rate, and they're going to put the HOA they would have, which just most students would be a guess. But then it's going to show them with what you put. You're going to have this down payment. You're going to have these closing costs approximately. You're going to have a total loan amount of this. You're going to have monthly principal and interest on your loan is going to be this. So most mortgage payment calculators stop there. But what we do is if their down payment is enough, we'll add PMI for their first several years until they've built enough equity. We have the HOA in here. We have an estimate of their homeowner's insurance. We have an estimate of the property tax they'll be paying every month in their escrow. Estimate of how much it's going to cost them to maintain their home every month, so they get a better picture of, okay, with this kind of type of home that I'm buying, this is really what I need to budget just to cover what otherwise would be rent. So that's why it kind of figures into that rent versus buy calculator, because that's when you're trying to make an apples-to-apples comparison. This is what you really need to see. Also part of this lesson is our new equity calculator, where it's saying if you've been making your regular payments on your loan for 12 years, for example, you've built $67,000 in equity. So that's what your total value is. It's really not a whole lot considering you had a $65,000 down payment, but as we go up, the equity increases at an exponential rate. And so this is months, not years. So I've got 300 is much farther in the loan. So I see my total equity is quite high. And they'll see at the very beginning of the loan, because of how amortization works, they're not building very much equity with their regular monthly payments. But as they get farther and farther into the loan, they're making bigger and bigger payments. That one applies directly to the next calculator, which is part of our mortgage math and ratios lesson, which shows them explicitly how much of each monthly payment they're making goes towards principal versus interest. And they can see how these curves shift over time. And if a student is deciding, they put in, I don't have very much money for a down payment, I'm going to get like an FHA loan that has very little, and then we have PMI figured in this. Their total payment is going to be high for a long time because they have this extra PMI payment that's going into it for 12 years if they have that little to put down. And then it drops off. And now these two equal each other, and so when it finishes, you can see they add up. And you can see over the life of the entire loan, to buy this $300,000 house, you're going to be paying $501,000. Just in interest in PMI, not even counting the principal you're paying back. This is just the cost to borrow. Whereas if I increase my down payment by just a couple tens of thousands of dollars, it cut off $100,000 of the total amount I'm paying over the course of the loan. So again, we have quiz questions and things here to help students really crystallize what these mean in relation to each other. And the last new calculator we have is part of our debt snowball and debt avalanche lessons, which I'll get into later. But this one lets students put in various debts. So let's say I have a student loan, and I've got $25,000 in my student loan at a 5% interest rate, and it's a 300-month loan, and I'm 12 months into it. I just graduated. And then I have another loan for a personal loan of $10,000, and this one's got actually just another credit card. And this one has just $2,500, and it's got a 21% interest. Oh, let's see, it's $7,500. That'll make it a little more interesting. So if it's an amortized loan, like a car loan or a student loan or a personal loan, they can put the loan term here. If it's a revolving loan, like a credit card, they leave those blank, and we have the specifications in here to help them understand it. When they click calculate, what it does is it gives an estimated monthly payment. It makes a couple assumptions on things like the credit card minimum payments and things, but it's an estimated minimum monthly payment. And what these calculators do is it shows if you use the debt snowball method, where the whole point is that as you pay off debts, you put those payments towards the next debt, the payments go faster and faster until the whole thing is paid off. And it does the same thing here with the debt avalanche, where the difference between a debt snowball and a debt avalanche is a debt snowball, you're going to pay off your loans with the smallest balance first. With the debt avalanche, you're going to pay off the highest interest rates first. And they get a comparison of if you pay them off with the two different methods, how much you're going to be paying in interest and how long it's going to take you to pay off the loans in total. Depending on the settings the students put in here with how many different types of debt they have, the snowball method is usually going to pay off the loan a little bit faster, but the debt avalanche is going to have a little bit lower total interest payment. And so again, we have quiz questions built into this to help them understand how these are all playing together. With some different examples for different people, and it has our guy Chet at the top, who is the character who is falling down the avalanche with some of the debts he has, and we use those as examples to show how the different methods play off each other. So those are the calculators we've added. Most of them you're going to be able to find in our new financial math lessons, which I'm about to talk about. So we've been having a big thrust as financial math is becoming a more and more common subject being taught. We're adding more and more lessons to it. Now, the financial math lessons have a lot in common with some of our personal finance lessons, but they'll go into a lot more detail of the nuts and bolts of the math. And sometimes they'll use examples that you would really cover in a math class, but not just a general financial literacy class. So one example, the lessons that we have is limits and logs, personal spending and saving. Actually, let me pull them up and show you real quick. This one focuses on the economic concept of utility to show students how to think about things with decreasing returns to scale. And so if you spend $100 on a pair of headphones versus you spending $150 on a pair of headphones, the quality of headphones you get at the higher price is probably going to be better, but it might not be 50% better. And so that's where we have this total value added concept where it's showing you're going to get a little bit less value the more you spend. And this is an example of you're buying a house or you're renting a house. So where's the most value coming from? It's actually at the earlier parts. And then it connects that to logarithms. So it defines what a logarithm is, and then it uses that showing using a logarithm you can actually easily plot a function that has decreasing returns to scale. So now we can talk about the concept of a discount rate, which is really what it comes down to is how much is a dollar today worth tomorrow, and how much is a dollar tomorrow worth today. So it uses the concept of beta, which is a concept that we're borrowing from economics, and it says in a year from now, if you have a beta of 0.5, it's a dollar a year from now is only worth 54 cents today. So you have to have somebody willing to pay you more than 54 cents to get you need to get less than 54 cents for a dollar a year from now. And then we also connect that to functions with sigma notation for utility using both the discount rate and logarithms. So it shows how far in the future is money worth to you. And then we connect that to savings and spending decisions. Because what it really means is a user who has a very high beta, meaning you value a dollar tomorrow very highly compared to a dollar today, maybe it's worth 99 cents tomorrow for a dollar today, you're much more likely to save and invest. So it requires a lower interest rate for you to be able to willing to save. And so we connect these goals together for a person to think about really what is a dollar worth to me in the future. And then the same thing goes for the future value lesson, and it's connecting those concepts in different ways. The next lesson is actually a lot simpler. It is discretionary spending and essential tendencies. So this is talking about wants and needs, connecting this with the mean, median, and mode. And so what this does is we have Esteban here is trying to think about how his spending on his cup of coffee is actually impacting his finances. And is that okay? And so what he does is he asks some people who he knows how much they spend every morning on breakfast and drinks. That way he can try to figure out how does he do compared to everybody else. So he adds them up, he finds the average, he finds the median, he finds the mode, and then he uses that to make a decision of is he spending an appropriate amount or is this something he really should be cutting back on. And we talk about skewedness too, about what that means. And we use that example for like a lunch event where we're using bins to look at different types of distributions, even when you don't have discrete data. It's a continuous thing, and you're using histogram to group the stuff together. So it's a good lesson to talk about all those concepts for central tendency and how they're actually applied when a student's trying to make a financial decision. Next lesson, also based on central tendency. This one is about planning a vacation. So this person wants to take the cheapest vacation they can get. They have 5 cities they'd be willing to go to. We talk about X and Y variables, explanatory versus response. So what the total cost is response, and these are explanatory. And we also get into lurking variables too. So lurking variable, two of the examples here are in Canada. And in Canada, the cost of food is actually higher in the United States. And so there's a lurking variable in here where this assumption of food being equal everywhere is not actually true. They have to include that cost into the calculations. From there, they want to try a bunch of different food, and they're trying to budget how much they're actually going to spend each day, how much cash they need to keep on them, so they do exactly that. They get their wish list of foods they want to try, they get a frequency distribution, and they see where their meal prices are going to be. They use the central tendency to figure out how much are they really going to need to have on their, in cash at all times to make sure they can pay for all their meals. And then it gives a couple of more examples of how to use this for other financial decisions. We really tie this back to personal finance. Future value unlocked. This was actually a very straightforward lesson on the concept of future value and compounding. So we have one example of trying to figure out how much a savings account is going to be worth in the future. Another example where a student is trying to save up for a car, and they're trying to determine if they're going to have enough money when they turn 18 to buy the car they want. And then a more complicated example where they're using 2 different time periods. So we have a couple different investment options, different time periods, and they're showing how to use the future value calculation to actually compare different time periods, different interest rates, apples to apples, to see which is actually going to be the best for their own personal situation. And this is where the future value calculator comes in, because the quiz questions have them do exactly that. The last math lesson is mortgage math and ratios. I mentioned this a little bit earlier. This is talking about the ratios that come into when you are choosing to buy a home, affordability ratios, down payment ratios, PMI, when that comes into the ratio that is for the total payments you're going to make, amortization, and this is where the equity calculators and the mortgage loan calculators come into play, because we use these calculators to illustrate those concepts for the students. The last new lesson that we released is our snowball debt and avalanche. I mentioned that calculator earlier, and the lesson talks about all of the things that lead up to that calculator. This one is actually not part of our financial math lesson. It's just in our unit on credit and debt. So it's in our regular personal finance lessons. And just icing the cake, we also released several new videos. These are embedded into our current lessons that have existed before, and we also have them available in our teacher resource video library if you go to our teacher resources page. The first one is reconciling accounts, another reconciling account lessons. The second is why invest in stocks, and honestly the why invest in stocks video I think is probably the best one we've done so far, so if you have time, check it out. It's also in the video library. Uses some examples of students who choose to start saving at different points in their life and to see how those savings play out. And our compound interest video that we actually released earlier in the fall, but you may have missed it. And that's talking entirely about the powers of compound interest. So that is all of the new features. The last thing is that I mentioned this in the fall update, but we are launching our teacher advisory panel. I was supposed to launch that in the fall, but unfortunately I went on parental leave for a month, and so I didn't have a chance to do that. We will be doing our first meetings in February. So if you're interested in having input on some of our new features, getting early access to some of the new games and features that we're thinking about releasing in the future, let me know. Email me at kevin@PersonalFinanceLab.com. So I'm looking forward to seeing everybody in a month. Happy teaching.